so I am going to show you now how to use oil pastels. Alright, so I just have a basic set of oil pastels from Pentel here. They're medium range oil pastels, they're absolutely fine. Alright, and they're always put in colour order, which massively helps you. So what you're going to do is you're going to choose 3 colours. Alright, we'll have a bit of an experiment first. And those 3 colours have to be a medium colour, a light colour, and then a dark colour. But preferably they are going to be of the same colour family. So for example, I could use a light blue, a dark blue, and possibly a black. If I had a purple, I could use purple. This would be my medium colour, the blue. This would be my light colour, and black would obviously cast my shadow. I could use orange as my medium colour, red as my dark colour, and yellow as my light colour. You could use just black, white, and grey. Okay, but grey would be your medium colour. So what I'm going to do is I will show you how to use light blue, dark blue, and black. Now you can, and I am going to show you how to use white anyway. Alright, so this becomes your, what I would call as a blending tool, so we may use that if we need to. Alright, so what we do is we start with our medium colours. This is very similar to what we've done with watercolour pencils and shading as well. Alright, so we'll start off with just drawing doing a bit of shading. So sorry, mine will be at an angle. Alright, so we just start off pressing on quite hard. Alright, so when I mean pressing on quite hard, you don't have to press on really hard. You just want it to basically go into the grain of the paper. Alright, so that's if you're using sketching paper. If you're just using printer paper, alright, then you might need to press on a little bit harder. Alright, and then as you move down, don't turn it into a funnel. I want you to keep your lines nice and straight. Alright, just keep going back over to make sure that it graduates nicely, alright, from kind of lots of blue, alright, to then very little blue. So obviously here I'm starting to take the pressure off. Alright, so it's getting lighter. Alright, until eventually, alright, there is very little blue there. So we don't want it to go too light too quickly and too dark too quickly. So I'm just going to go over, and to be honest, all I've done here is just use the same pressure throughout. I've just gone over and over it lots and lots of times. Okay, this is how you should do shading. Alright, so we can now put that one to one side. Alright, what we're now going to do is you don't start using your dark colour until you have finished, alright, using all the other colours. Alright, so the reason being is that your dark colour then gets blended into all of these colours, especially if you're using black. And this will be really important information for when you are doing your portraits. Okay, so what we do now is we're now going to go over. I'm not going to start straight away into that black, into the darker blue. All right, but I'm now going to go over and do pretty much exactly the same with my lighter blue. Now, can you see here what's happening? Is this blue is going into the grain of the paper. What we don't want with oil pastels is any of these light bits coming through. All right, so we need to make sure that we're completely covering it. Now, we don't need to cover it completely at this stage, because by the time you've layered it all and worked into it with all your different colours and tweaked it with your portraits and so on, or any drawing, all right, then you're probably going to find that you don't have any grain of paper. But if you are working into your portraits and you have this, we'll call them gaps. So when you're a child, you'll colour in. You'll always be told when you were colouring in at primary school, don't leave any gaps. This is massively important with oil pastel. Okay, we don't want any gaps. All right, oil pastel is a blending tool. It's a blending material, a blending technique. Now, obviously, as you start to experiment a little bit more, you might find actually you quite like that. It creates texture and so on. But on a face, for portraits, it's not really going to work. For most subjects, it doesn't really work. Okay, so if you see now as I'm moving down, it is not picking up. so much of the darker blue. All right, now what I'm having to do is the complete opposite of what I did here, where I pressed on a bit harder. I'm now having to press on a bit harder on the lighter area. Okay, just to make sure that this blue colour, this lighter blue, okay, is kind of blending in nicely. Now what you can do is, if you are confident, you can also go in the opposite direction in the lighter area and then keep going back over. And what that might do is pull, especially if you've got really good high quality oil pastels, it will start to pull that colour, the blue that's in the background, it'll pull it through. So you see here where I had a bit of a clump, you probably couldn't see on the camera. All right, I just go over and it just blends it that little bit more. All right. Okay, and here what I'm going to do is I'm now going to take this lighter blue a bit further down, try not to funnel, which means going to a small triangle. All right, and then what I'm going to do there is I'm going to add a bit of white to that. All right, can you see here that what's happening with the oil pastel? So you're getting some of these marks here. All right, the oil pastel wears away. Now, what happens here is if you have too many of these clumps on your oil pastel, when it comes to blending, all of a sudden they are going to show up and they become pieces, and it's not good. So try every now and then and just clean away, all right, the clumps off the edge of the oil pastel, all right, make it a bit easier for you. So prime example here, look, I've been using this oil pastel for just to start the portrait before this demonstration. You see here that the oil pastel has got some residue from the previous portrait. So all I'm going to do is just pick it off. At this point, it's probably quite handy, all right, to have a piece of tissue nearby. All right. So what I do is make sure that is clean. Make sure that there's no other kind of colour on there that will contaminate it. And I'm now going to work the other way. Okay, and I'm just going to add a bit of white in there, just to blend up into the blue. And I don't stop, all right? I want to make sure that all of a sudden that white, I don't need to go all the way up, so I'm taking the pressure off as I move into the middle. Okay, but now I can see there's a line here, so all I'm going to do, go in the opposite direction and then smooth it out. Hopefully that'll smarten that up. And do the same here. Just to try and make sure that there aren't any steps. Yeah, we want it to blend nice and evenly. Okay, so again, we need to make sure that that oil pastel has got no residue on it, and I'll sort that out in a second. All right, what we'll do is now we're going to create shadow. Now this is going to be the detail in your portrait. All right, so we're going to add the faintest tint of black. All right, black tends to completely overshadow everything. All right, so we're only going to add the tiniest amount. Okay, and then we're going to go back to this darker blue. I'm going to use this darker blue to shade it in. Now, the reason why we're not going straight into the lighter blue is because if you remember, the lighter blue I didn't start it straight away. Okay, so I'm going to go in different directions here, even using some swirls, just to create that darker effect, and more so important here because I don't want that line of the black, all right, to be a solid line. Okay. When I'm happy with what I've done with the dark blue, I'm not going to take it too far down. I'm then going to pick up the lighter blue and just make sure that I'm pulling in some of that black as well, so that it blends seamlessly. All right, so for me, I'm just going to go right up into it and use this lighter one as more of a blending tool. Okay, and that goes from light to dark quite nicely. You might want to pull this black down a bit further. It's completely up to you. We will also use this black to add facial features and extra detail into the portrait. and I won't be blending that in necessarily. I might even leave that. So, you know, you don't always have to blend the black in, but if you're creating a shadow, then yes, you do. All right, so what we'll do now is I should do a demonstration with a sphere, because on a portrait you're going to be using, you're not going to be doing your blending in one direction. Okay, so like we did with, like I've done with the chalk before, using your medium one to start, decide where your light's coming from, this way for me. Remember, as you're going up towards the light, you take pressure off and you leave a gap on the sphere. So have a practice with these two first before you start any portrait. Get an idea of what happens and how you can work with the oil pastel, cleaning the residue, learning how it picks up the colour, moves the colour about, and so on. Okay, I don't need to clean this at the moment because I'm using the same colours. I'm just going to start colouring in some of these gaps here. And also blending the dark blue into this lighter blue. It's exactly the same principle as when I was doing this one. As I'm moving towards the light, I'm having to press on that little bit harder. What I did then, if you noticed, is I turned the oil pastel around because it's wearing out. So I turn it around to a sharper point, because the sharper point gets the oil pastel into the grain of the paper. You see which you note how I am using the oil pastel and the different directions that I am working in. Okay, so using the white. Now I am going to clean the white because I want that bit here to be pure white. I do not want to be putting in all of that. You can see it's different shades of blue and white there. Okay, so I'll just give that a bit of a clean. You don't have to be as messy as I am and do it with your fingers. You can do it with a tissue. Okay, and can you see here there's a blob of oil pastel, so I'm just going to move that. Okay, that was right. That wouldn't have mattered if it was in this bit here, but here I don't want to be pulling into, I don't want to end up with a blob of blue. So working in circular motions to start off with, because if I start working like this and pulling it in, I'm going to be pulling the darker shades into the lighter bit. But what I want to do is actually pull the lighter bits into it. So I'm mixing and blending those blues so that it becomes a bit lighter. Okay, now I'm going to give it a clean again, because I'm now going to work on this light here. And I clean it again, just so that I'm working with a pure white. Okay, and all I'll do is now I'm going to start pulling this white in to the rest of the sapphire, just so that it blends in again seamlessly. It graduates perfectly. But can you see I'm creating this kind of rough effect with the white oil pastel? It's going over the top. You can see it. All right, so therefore what I'm now going to do is again giving that a bit of a clean off. Okay, is I'm now going to use that the lighter blue. Now I'm going to blend that white into the darker blue. All right, just to make it as smooth as possible. And again, practicing doing your smooth effects is really important for the face, because most faces are quite smooth, especially if you're going to draw a picture of a young child. Okay, now what we'll do, exactly the same as what we did before. Add in the black, cast in the shadow, tiny amount. We don't need to be pressing on hard with this at all. Obviously where it's really dark, you can put in a few more marks, okay, and just put a bit more in just so it blends in seamlessly. Okay, remember, you can use the darker blue first, which will cast even more of a shadow for you. Try not to go too far up into the light. I don't want to be contaminating that light. Not at the moment anyway. Okay, so I'm going to work in spirals. You'll find your own way of blending it in. A lot of that is down to personal preference. I think spirals work quite well. Okay, and then again we go to the lighter. And just use that just to kind of blend it in again so it's completely seamless. And if I had more time, I could carry on making that blend absolutely perfectly. All right, so practice with that. All right, try and get used to that technique first. Kind of get an A3 sheet of paper or a section in your sketchbook and mess around with the oil pastels. Maybe do a square, maybe do a circle, a triangle, different shapes, different shading techniques, different colours. Try and use lots of black with the lighter colours and see how that blends. Try and use the skin colour. All right, messing around with some skin tones. You could have a go with the skin tones, so you could use this one, which is a natural kind of skin colour anyway, pale orange. And you can add orange into it as well, because that'll add to some of the kind of blushy hues on the blushy tones on the cheeks. A tiny bit of red. Be very careful with the red. You put too much of that on and it is going to be bright. All right, so only add a little bit of that. So these colours here, okay, they will all be suitable for your skin tone. So maybe do a circle and try and use these. You would only add a tiny bit of yellow and a tiny bit of red and touch on the brown. Definitely only touch on the orange. Okay, you might also want to try a bit of grey, just maybe around the eyes a little bit, just to kind of calm down this brown. That would work. So have a little mess around with that and see where you get to. The next video will show you how to start working into the face.